I spoke to Eric Lecompte, Executive Director of Jubilee USA Network, and I asked him what is most troubling about the U.S. tax code.
Specifically, it's the amount of tax avoidance that goes on. Right now in the United States, between corporate and individual tax avoidance, it amounts to about $150 billion annually. And that's money that we believe should be used for revenues for our schools, our hospitals, and our infrastructure, yet that money is getting seeped out of the United States.
But what's your policy when people reply and say, hey, we're getting overtaxed, there are these loopholes, there's these extenuating circumstances when you talk about deductions and stuff? Are you including that when you say tax avoidance, or you're saying it's tax evasion?
Well, we're not including those things. We're actually talking about evasion, or at times doing avoidance through using legal loopholes. So, for example, 2 years ago, it was very well known that not only did General Electric not pay a penny in U.S. taxes, but they received a $2 billion tax rebate. So for those of us that pay our taxes regularly, whether you're part of the Tea Party or you're part of Occupy Wall Street, when you see that, it's absolutely startling to know that not only are you not paying taxes, but you're getting paid for avoiding your taxes.
If I could, I'd create a list of 100 things that I think are unfair in the U.S. tax code. So we can go on and on for a couple hours on this. So I think we agree there are issues within the tax code that are unfair to both individuals and likely companies as well. The bottom line is, down the street here in Congress, they've talked about reforming the tax code for decades. And at the White House, they've talked about it, and nothing gets done. And that's the frustration with the public, isn't it?
I think it is right now. And I think ultimately we're in a situation where most individuals in the United States are completely complying with their tax obligations, but you have a very small percentage of exceptionally wealthy people, as well as corporations, that are avoiding billions in taxes. And you shouldn't be able to avoid taxes just because you're making more money.
Well, first of all, I don't think that's why they're avoiding taxes, because they make money, they're able to. They may have some very good and smart accountants, perhaps, and lawyers that are helping them. So what's the solution? Shouldn't the IRS be, like the SEC, they were criticized before when we talked about Wall Street. They didn't have the tools necessary to fight the Wall Street crooks. Well, today, when you talk about tax evasion or tax avoidance, the IRS needs to have the tools as well to sort of, first of all, find out who these people or companies are. Do they have those tools?
Well, that's exactly right. Unfortunately, they don't have those tools. And over the last year, we've seen the budget of the IRS cut. And you know what? No one likes to pay their taxes. I don't like to pay my taxes. And the IRS has a bad name. But when we cut resources from the IRS, it allows people who have the means to avoid even paying large amounts of taxes.
Let's talk about individuals. I'm going to separate the companies out because that can be potentially another topic. What percentage of people, in your opinion, are not paying their fair share of taxes, individuals?
Well, we don't know exactly what the amount is of individuals that are avoiding their taxes, the actual percentage. We know what the rough amounts are. And right now, we know that is about $50 billion annually that is attributed to individual tax evasion. One of the ways that tax evasion is taking place right now is through having a bank account in another country, being able to have an account in a tax haven. And when you do that, you can find ways to avoid the scrutiny of the IRS.
You're basically hiding your money elsewhere.
Exactly.
This isn't something new. This has been happening since the beginning of time, that people hide their money from whoever wants to tax them.
That's exactly right. But the problem now has become so large and so significant. We know that it's impacting the budget issues we're having in the United States, but we also know that around the world, it's one of the leading causes of poverty. Right now, for every $10 in aid that goes to the developing world, over $100 is leaving from the developing world in tax evasion, illicit flows, and corruption. So we know that even in terms of how we look at aid around the world and how we raise revenue, that unfortunately it's connected to high levels of poverty in the developing world.
Going back to enforcement, that sounds like a big issue. We can make all the rules we want, but if somebody doesn't want to pay their taxes and is willing to set up an account in the Cayman Islands, fly out there with a bag of cash and hide their money, there's very little that enforcement officers here in the U.S. can do about that. If someone's bent on doing specifically that motive, how are they going to enforce something like this in an entirely different country?
Well, that's right. There needs to be a higher level of infrastructure around the world. And it's not only a U.S. problem, it's a global problem. So when we have banks and we have tax havens that are allowing people to hide their money, it creates a significant problem. It is illegal in the United States to not report income and revenue sources as well as money you have around the world, although we know very clearly that people do that.